What's up guys, Card Boss back in another video. Happy holidays, and we're counting down the number of days to the end of 2024, and as promised I have my year in review video. I expect this video is gonna drag on pretty long, and I have some comments from people to say that my video is a bit lengthy because I tried to spend a bit of time to elaborate my thoughts further. So I decided to maybe gonna break up this year in review video to a couple of parts. I don't know how many parts yet, but this is part one, so stick around. Okay, welcome back guys. So let's get right into it. The year in review 2024. This is the first year that I started as a full-time doing selling cards, right? Sports cards and Magic the Gathering. Well, I would say that was 99% sports and Magic. You know, if you want to break it down further, yep, maybe about 95, maybe 94% sports and 5 to 6% Magic the Gathering. So, but it's going to talk of mostly focus on the sports aspect. Okay, now typically when you enter into business, obviously you have a plan, and you know, like any sports cards reseller or full-time selling, the main objective is to just sell, make a profit, right? Build as much revenue as you can, earn as much money as you can in whatever way that you can. Okay, so that's the general goal. But for me, I was kind of specific on setting certain goals that I had for earlier this year, and in this video, you know, maybe not just this video, but in this series of my year in review, I'll talk a bit about how the plans kind of pivot from where it started to where it has come down to, and what eventually you're going to recap everything and to look forward to what's ahead in year 2025. Okay, so without further ado, just going to talk about what are the goals that are set for 2024. Okay, now if people tell you, say that the goal is to as much revenue, quantifying the actual revenue, I'm going to do 200,000 in sales or 300,000 in sales, whatever it is, right? It's actually quite difficult from a sports card perspective because, as you know, right, market goes up and down, demand goes up and down, lots of changes, ebbs and flows with this market. So I've learned early on, even before I did this full time, that trying to set hard financial targets is a pretty challenging task for this business. So instead, you focus on setting key metric targets. Okay, and what do we mean by that? And I broke down my business into three key metrics. Okay, now the first is, obviously I wanted to have a number of cards consistently to be sent to PSA for grading. At any one point, I set a certain number. Okay, so I set up this rule that I have. It's called the 100 100 100 rule. Okay, 300 in total, but it's called 100 times 3 rule. And the first rule that I have was, at any one point in time, that I wanted to have at least 100 cards with PSA at any one point in time that's in process for grading. It can be in different stages of grading. Okay, it could be in the order receiving, it could be under grading, it could be whatever it is, right? Or it also could be en route back. Okay, so as long that the card wasn't with me, it's still with PSA, all right, or it's en route to PSA, it would be form part of this little bucket here. Okay, the next bucket would be 100 cards that's available for sale. Okay, so which means that cards that's already come back from PSA or cards that I've purchased that's available for sale. So I wanted to have 100 cards as part of my inventory. Now, to you, it's like, hey, 100 is not a big number, right? To you, it could be, I've got 1,000 cards. I've got like, you know, many more thousands of cards. But for me, because I was focused on a certain kind of value, like because I'm based overseas, so it didn't really make sense for me to sell $10 cards or $20 cards. The shipping itself would kill. Okay, so more focus on the bigger stuff, slightly bigger. I wouldn't say like, you know, the tens of thousands, but something that's above the 150 to 500. That's kind of like the median, and maybe, you know, I would say that the remaining 40% of my stock or 30% of my inventory will focus on above the $500 range. So that's where I'm typically getting at least that was the plan in the initial start of the business. Okay, So 100 cards with PSA, 100 cards in inventory. And the final 100 is basically 100K working capital. Now, don't get shocked, this is not 100K US dollars, this is 100K ringgit, which roughly translates to about $22,000 US dollars. Now, it's not 22K working capital in terms of cash, okay? It's 22K of working capital in terms of the cards that's available for sale plus cash, okay? Now, what I'm going to delve into each of these buckets. I'm going to tell after that, follow up and tell you guys the problem with each of these buckets here. Okay, so obviously, to any business, you have a starting point. Like, you just don't get 100 cards in PSA. You just don't get 100 cards in your inventory from the very beginning, right? You have the starting point. So obviously, the starting point is capital, cash, or available cards that you have. So when I first started this business, obviously, I have more than 100K ringgit, or in this case, $22,000 worth of capital to be deployed, and some cash, some cards, okay? Some cards that I already brought forward from the previous year, and I talked about that in my previous video. So obviously, this is a larger number than just the 22K, but what I wanted to do is I wanted to maintain consistently that I had 22K of flexible working capital, which means that I would have cash to buy stuff or easily flip certain cards that I could deploy straight away to get cash, okay? So that was my goal. So I always want to make sure that I have enough working capital to kind of like, if I see something that is kind of a good deal, I want to be able to just buy it straight away, okay? So after deploying my initial capital, which is more than 22K, as I explained, right? So I have cards that I've purchased, I have cards that's actually en route and then processed for grading and stuff like that, okay? And eventually, I got my numbers up. So I have cards that's available for sale, I have cards that's actually en route to PSA or grading in PSA. And the numbers were, I was tracking these matrices. So, let's say I would have like 50 cards with PSA or 60 cards with PSA. You have like, 40 cards in inventory, stuff like that. And I was at the same time trying to maintain my working capital flow. So you can see the cycle that I have here. In terms of the metrics, okay? So spending money, buying cards, using working capital, money going to PSA sends cards for grading, cards available for sale, sell the cards accordingly, and then work back the money back into the working capital bucket. So I have this little nice ecosystem that I thought about. Now, here comes the problem. The problem is I encountered a bunch of choking points along the way. Okay, now what are these choking points? I'm sure some of you guys are pretty familiar with some of these things I'm going to mention. The choking points, number one, with PSA, obviously, there's a time lag that you cannot control. Okay, some cards you expect to turn around quicker, some cards you don't, takes a bit longer. Now, especially if you sell, you're trying to balance it, you're trying to get the most value from PSA and sending a lot of cards using the value, which is the cheapest option available, but as you can tell, the turnaround times are pretty long. 45, 55 business days is what they say. Sometimes longer, sometimes shorter. I got lucky sometimes, certain things have gotten back much quicker than anticipated, but some actually went way longer. To counter that, you actually go through a higher tier system, right? The regular, whereby they tell you it's 15 business days. But again, you have to balance the cost as well, especially sometimes the cards don't bounce your way. Cards thinking that you invest a bit more money to get a quicker turnaround time, thinking that you get a PSA 9, for example, and it comes out PSA 7. So not only you have to pay more for grading fees, it actually works out not in your favor. So, and that's just to try to counteract the timing difference or that choking point that I mentioned earlier with the PSA side. Now, that will also lead to translate from the cards going into available for sale. So that's the next choking point, whereby if you're not getting your PSA returns consistently, you're actually not having cards available for sale, okay? So, and when your inventory count is actually lesser, so it's hard for you to move things around, which leads to the next choking point, is actually to maintain amount of working capital available to deploy, to buy certain things, to buy inventory. So if you're not having enough cards to sell, you're not turning enough cash into your business, and without cash, you can't even buy. And you can't buy, you can't send cards to PSA. So you have this cycle, right? Now, could you break out this cycle? Most definitely can, right? You could increase the volume, you could put in more money if you wanted to try to get that cycle going at the higher velocity, okay, which I've tried, okay. Believe me, I've tried. Huge cash injection coming in, and try to get things moving faster, but I run into a different problem, right? The cards itself, the prices of the cards itself move so quickly, okay, and it's not just about the player's performance, it's not just about injury, it's just about demand. Right, you can see Michael Jordan cards just suddenly go up and down and up and down. Now they don't go up significantly or go down significantly, but the percentages, once you actually take into account the fees, the logistics, right, the profit margins just gets eroded, right, when you look at the ups and downs of these trends. Now sometimes you catch the wave, sometimes you don't, but it's just so difficult, right, when you try to balance and trying to stick to, the goal to stick to these 3 core metrics was getting tougher and tougher. And because I was adamant on trying to stick to this metric, okay, I find myself doing certain things that I shouldn't be doing, and I'm going to share you some examples. For example, I wanted to have 100 cards with PSA at any one point in time, so I end up buying, just buying so that I could meet this 100 card target. Sometimes I give myself a bit of leeway in terms of condition, which is not the right thing you should be doing. I give myself leeway in terms of the type of cards that I buy. I tell initially I want to buy high quality cards, buy good players only. Then I end up, just dabbling, telling myself, look, just to meet the quantities, I just want to dabble into certain players that I shouldn't be dabbling in the first place, taking some risks. Jonathan Kuminga is one of them. I got burned by that one. So, but all in all, right, that actually, kind of like made me to make poorer decisions. All right, and then when it comes to the other way, when as far as trying to maintain a level of inventory on hand available for sale, you kind of like try to push things a bit faster, right? You have all these things sitting PSA, you realize that, hey, I'm running low on my stock, I need to actually put more cards into available for sale, and I end up spending a bit more in terms of getting a faster turnaround time with PSA. Again, not the greatest of ideas. And when it comes to selling, right, you need more cash as well to buy more things, and then you realize that you gotta sell things quicker than you anticipated. Right, I sell at prices that you don't really want to be selling at. Yeah, maybe you make a little bit of margin, after buying a certain card, getting it sent to PSA, get a decent grade of PSA 9, thinking that you can sell for, let's say, $1,000, which is the comps, and maybe make, let's say, $300. But no offers after 3 weeks, and you get a bit stressed, and then you realize that, hey, some offer comes by whereby you just make $100 and said, screw it, right? Just take the $100 profit and then move on, which sometimes having a bit more patience is the right way to go. But in this case, because you're sticking to that game plan, which actually didn't really work well, for me. I didn't really say that I make a loss out of this, but because I stuck with that goal, it made kind of difficult for me eventually. So what happened, we'll talk about timelines. I kind of stuck with this plan for about 4 or 5 months, I believe, up to May of this year. So from January to May, I was like doing this, I was churning quickly. So PSA was coming back orders. But I quickly realized by May of this year, this strategy wasn't really working. I thought that I had a good plan, working out a metric, but apparently, because of me sticking to the metric, kind of a bit detriment to the business. So I had to revamp the plan again, right? To be less focused on the metric numbers and to focus on the number one thing, the quality. Okay, the quality of cards actually matters, not the quantity and not the actual, churn, I would say, right? Because I was sticking to the 100 rule, right? I realized that because I was just pushing cards to PSA, I just want to buy anything so I could get 100 rules. I just basically just sent for grading, get as much as inventory up available for sale as possible, so that thinking that with more items I could have more views on my store and sell more things and make more revenue. But apparently that's not the case, and eventually I figured out that quality matters, right? It may be a bit risky, it may be a bit more intimidating to just buy a handful of cards to grade and eventually to hold and to sell, but the return, as long the quality of the cards is there, right, you would actually benefit more in the bigger picture and a 12-month scale, right? You may not sell as many cards in that 1 month. You may not actually grade that many cards in that 1 month. You feel a bit, I feel I'm not doing that much, but the quality of the card that you actually buy and to grade or to sell or to hold, all right, for that period and to sell eventually and make that kind of profit that you on that particular quality card may actually outweigh all the churn that you did based on the original goal that I set, which is what I discovered. And by the time I pivoted to this strategy, and I realized that that was a working strategy, and I realized that I was doing pretty well from July to August of this year with that new strategy. So that's basically the first part of this year in review. Okay, so bringing it to abrupt, so to keep this video on a concise manner. Next topic, I'm going to talk a bit about the sales platforms, the sales channel, okay, which is a pretty big learning for me this year. All right, like, subscribe, follow this one so you can catch part 2 of this segment. The next one, couples out.